Hello and welcome to my final FM21 video. As much requested, we've done a second version of our 5 years in the future episode from our Build a Nation story with Bangor City, but it's not quite the one we discussed. So we're going to get through that and have a look at what's happened in this world. If you're looking forward to it, please do chuck a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe down below for regular content from FM22 as soon as the beta's released. And of course, Cricket 22 is not far away as well. There's one slightly special thing coming from a different football manager later in the week. And we've got live streams from 3:30 tomorrow and Wednesday on Twitch. So please do come and check them out too. But today, the reason we're back is to do our 5 years in the future with Bangor City revisited. Now, the reason we're doing this again is we talked about the fact that the players had been sold for peanuts, the fact that most of the squad was disintegrated the first summer, and we talked about a couple of different ways we might be able to change that. Now, the one I floated that we talked about in the comments was potentially just selling them all for as much as we could and seeing what difference it made. Now, 2 points on that. A lot of you pointed out that it'd probably still be the same because they'll replace them with the same dross. They'll just spend a little bit more. And I had a go at it and it was almost exactly the same outcome. So I didn't just want to make the same video. So what I decided to do instead is I was planning to off camera continue this save for another year anyway. So I thought I'll manage through to the end of August, do what I would anyway, make the signings I would have made, get everyone tied down to new contracts, extend the loans, etc, etc, and get them to September with the transfer window closed with the best possible squad as I would have it if I were carrying on with the series. And what we're going to do today is see the outcome of that. And it's interesting, I think it would be fair to say. Let's go and have a look at Bangor City though and what we did at the start of the 2040-2041 season. And of course their progress since. So the immediate change from the last time is that there's a few more familiar names about. Bangor City have won the league every season. Bojan Kvara's still there. That's no different to last time. He stayed around and he's been a brilliant striker for them. However, the captain is Dimitar Nenov, a man who was sold in the first summer of our other 5 years in the future because he only had 1 year left on his contract. So extending those deals have really helped Bangor City keep a few of them. And if we go and have a look at the squad in its entirety, they've still got Roberto Simancas. They kept Odell, who was actually the first sale in the other one. That's because we extended his deal for 4 years as well. And Danny Gomez Garcia is still there too, as is Simancas. But Odell and Nenov, 2 additional players that have stayed for the 5 years, which I think is a really nice sign. Of course, still the same stadium though, and no sign of anything changing when it comes to youth players through the academy. They've all gone off straight away. Kept their 3.5-star reputation. Wyn Williams though is the manager. He's just taken over. He was at Colwyn Bay before, but actually had a year at Swansea. So that's a really good sign that he's been managing at a higher level and has come back to Bangor City. Sure, he's not doing the same job as us though. Let's see how they've been getting on in the Welsh Premier League. Well, interestingly, they've won 31 out of 32. So the immediate sign is a lot more dominance from Bangor City. The question is, will that have benefited them in the league or will it have harmed the other clubs more? My suggestion is, looking at the competition reputation, they actually stayed in a better position for a little while. And they stayed up in the top 10 or 11 until 2043. But this year have dropped off slightly, which is a bit of a shame. They're still 3.5-star though. That's an improvement on last time. So starting with Bangor City and transfers, let's go back to the summer that we managed. Okay, this is the summer we took charge of. And it's a crucial one because we extended the loans of the likes of Reddy, Reyes and Trenta. So they had 3 more top class players in already. We signed 2 on free agent deals. I've no idea what they're like now. Fortes is at Sheffield United worth 40 million quid. He was a very good player. 3rd choice striker behind Bulkley and Kvara when I left. And then Dario Gizzo I got on a free. Holding midfielder with lots of ability. He'd started the season on fire for me when I left at the start of September. I also tried my best to sell players to other teams in the nation. So Jim Ruffle, one of our better youngsters, went to Barrytown United, where he still is actually. Played in the Europa Conference this season 4 times. That doesn't look good. However, that's basically where he was at 18, so he hasn't developed at all there. Aside from him, we sold David Clark, a youngster, to TNS, who's now at Carmarthen on loan from Barry. But what we've seen again is a bit of a mass exodus in January from Bangor City, the first window after we left. However, he and Bulkley were sold for his release clause. Mubarak Whelan, they got 35 million. And Gizzo, who we signed for a free, was sold for £10 million in January, which is great business. The only one that's really a disappointment is Gethin Davis. Now, he was the only other player who stayed in the last 5 years in the future. He's gone for peanuts there. Maybe not playing a huge amount, but he was a really good player, and we were getting bids of a little bit more than that. Good to see, though, that players generally going for much closer to their value. Let's have a quick look at Bulkley and Whelan. I mean, Kean Bulkley is one of the best strikers in the world, playing in the Champions League for Burnley, 31 goals for Wales. What a superstar. Did really well for Norwich too, over 1 in 3 in the league. In terms of Mubarak Whelan, he is playing for Liverpool. He's on 220 grand a week. He's a superstar player for them. You could argue he's become the best player of any we've managed and one of the best centre-halves in the world. There's no doubt in that. Let's move on to the first full season without us then and see what's happened. So a few sales, up to 50 million quid. A big signing from Spurs, who looks like has retired, so must have been a bit older. Ricardo Tuki was the other big signing, 4.4 million. Okay, so wingers, so they obviously changed tactics straight away. But more importantly, I know he's left again since, that's a player who was younger when he was signed. He would have been, 22 years of age. That's a very different strategy to what happened in the first one. They sold Hector Leon for 10 million. They sold Simmons for 10 million. Nathan Roberts, 1.3. We moaned about, 6 million last time? 1.3 million. Are you kidding me? I don't understand it. Fletcher went for 15, which is a bit closer to value. And Briones went for double the amount of the other save with £18 million to PSG. That was in January as well. So definitely an improvement in terms of values overall. Apart from Roberts, which is just a travesty again. Let's move on to the third season. So Bulich sold for a ridiculous loss. Kyo Bulkley, he stayed for 2 years. Then he was sold to Barca. That would have been 1 year remaining on his contract because he was the one who refused to sign a new deal. But they would have sold him at 28 for 36 million. That's not bad going, I don't think. They spent £10 million on a player from Chelsea who is still there and very good actually. So these signings are a lot better than the ones we saw last time. It's given me a little bit of optimism. Quite a lot of free agents and loans, almost working a bit like we do. Dave Wood was one who was breaking into our team. He's on loan from Bangor City to Bala and then Airbus. Decent player at this level. But not many big sales. So even in that third season, they would have still had a fair few of them about. That's a positive sign, I think. Let's move on to season 4. That's an even more positive sign. So, Tuki, who they signed in a second season for 4 odd million quid, was sold for 21.5 million to Inter Milan. That's incredible business. We should be really proud of that. Tate went for 11 million to Villa. What a player he became. We loaned him out to TNS for the first season after we left as well. So he extended his loan and stayed there. I'm hoping that'll have an impact on their European form. They spent 7.5 million from City on Araujo. That's a top-class left-back. He's playing for United now, which is a worry, but if they made a profit again, that could be a good business strategy. A couple of other backups going out, the likes of Agost, but still a few of the regulars there. I'm looking there and thinking 4 seasons in, Brett Jennings is still about. He went at the start of the 4th in the last one. I'm thinking Fortes, who he signed in the first season, would have still been there. So they would have had a good 7 or 8 players of our squad still about. Let's go and have a look at the last season. So spending 20 odd million again. Germano was the biggest deal. Very good winger at peak age. David Cook from Spurs. Good young left back. They sold. Brett Jennings went for 15 million. Fortes for 20 million. Anybody else? 25 for Araujo. They're making big profit on players. This is a different strategy. I like it. I just hope it hasn't underwhelmed in Europe. I'm wondering why they needed that money more than anything. I'm hoping it won't be a disaster. But certainly kept hold of a few players for a bit longer. Signed better. Sold them at a profit. It's more like my one club strategy and something you might see later in the week in my special episode relating to another FM. But the big question is, how have they done overall? Of course, it looked a lot better domestically. Let's have a look at their competitions. So, won the Welsh League every year, won the Welsh Cup every year, won the League Cup 3 times, and won the SPFL Trust Trophy every year. Nothing in Europe, though. We wouldn't expect them to get further than we took them, but can they have produced something? Can they have got to the knockouts regularly? Let's go back to the first season, 2040-41. Now, I left on the eve of this fixture against Zenit St. Petersburg. They drew it 2-2. They lost to Burnley and Bayern. It was a horrible group. I don't think they've got out of it. They haven't. Second season, in the Champions League group, they've got Raith Rovers again. Besiktas and Manchester United should be getting at least third there. They got second behind United, but then lost to Real Madrid, which is understandable. Third season, they had Inter Milan, Valencia, Shakhtar, maybe third place? No, out automatically. That's not great. Fourth season, Marseille, back in the playoffs against Linfield, won comfortably. Beat Marseille on the first day, but then Barcelona and Dortmund. Have they snuck third? They did. Oh, okay. Europa League first knockout, beat Lille comfortably, then lost to Burnley in the second knockout round. That's unfortunate, but a much better run. And then this season, they've played Shakhtar in the playoff and beaten them. Then in the groups, they faced Lorient, who they beat. They faced Sheffield Wednesday and Atletico. So they're just dropping down in the seedings, and being third seed is harming them. They went out in fourth place in that group. So they must have lost away to Lorient then. They won at home 2-1, lost 1-0 away. So what, on away goals, they will have dropped out altogether. That might even be worse than last time around, but still, doing better domestically. Let's hope the other teams haven't suffered, because this is the argument, isn't it? If one team is utterly dominant, the other teams often fall down. Whereas, quite often, we would expect the whole league to pull together. Let's have a look at TNS. Still 5 Welsh sides in Europe, which is a much better sign. Let's see how they did, because they had some massive runs in the 5 years in the future that we saw last week. So this season, we'll start with the most recent Europa League group stages. How did they get on? Good enough to finish third, but then went out in the first knockout round of the Europa Conference. Season before that, they dropped into the Europa Conference groups. So hang on, they were in the Europa League playoff. Oh, they've been bottling it again. So TNS, third, second. It's not good enough, really, is it? They've been a constant disappointment by not securing that second spot. In the Europa Conference group, they must have got through. They did, but then they went out to Astana. They should be winning those sorts of ties. The year before that, went out in Champions League qualifying, then out in the Europa League groups. Werder Bremen, Aberdeen, and Admira Wacker. I mean, really, they should have got through that in third. The season before that, they got through the Europa League group to the Europa Conference qualifiers. They went out on penalties to Sion. Sorry, to the Europa Conference knockout, that was. And in the first season, Europa Conference groups and out in a second knockout to Linfield. So disappointing. Worse than we saw last time. Let's have a look at Coimbe. So they finished 5th the season we left off, but did qualify through the playoff. They then finished 2nd, 4th, 3rd and 4th. So a very interesting and inconsistent spell for them. Let's have a look at the schedule, shall we? Most recent season, out in the Europa Conference groups. Season before that, out in qualifying. Season before that, Europa Conference groups, out though with next to no points, and against poor sides as well. And a second season, they lost in Champions League qualifying, went out in the Europa League group. And the first season, Europa Conference first knockout round, lost to Aberdeen. In qualifying, they did do well to get to the groups anyway. So disappointing. I'm looking at that Coimbe side. They've actually got a really decent team. Ben Nash is an okay striker. Jordan Hall, very good player in midfield. I'd argue that the standard of the league in terms of players across the board is stronger than it was in our other 5 years in the future. But the other teams are still doing worse in Europe. And I don't really understand that. Let's have a look at Barrytown United, who were the other big boy, and see how they got on. We look at the schedule. So were they finishing second? They finished second 1 year. And aside from that, they've been all over the shop. This has been the problem. Nobody's really been consistent and pushed forward. So the star player was apparently Neil Mitchell, who the winger who's pretty good. Have a look at their other ones. I mean, it's a big step up in standard of players that we haven't seen in any of the other saves, albeit Barry have only got 3 or 4 of them. But why that hasn't translated on the pitch, I'm not sure. This season they got through qualifying to the Europa Conference groups, but went out. Season before that, Europa League group stages. went out though in 4th place. Third season, Europa Conference Group, out in the first knockout round to Basel. Season before that, out in qualifying to Ostend. And the first season, they got to the Europa League groups. They went out in 4th place. So disappointing. Let's have a look at the biggest transfers in the league campaign, just so we can see if there's anything special happening. So if we go in terms of order of fee, the big ones are obviously Bangor City. Colwyn Bay spent £2.5 million on Jordan Hall. TNS spent £2.1 million on Akeem Stamford. The players are better. Even Barry spent 750 grand. There's better players there than the ones we saw in the 5 years last week. But the performances in Europe have been poorer across the board. That's the bit I don't really understand here. The year before that, again, Colwyn Bay 550 grand, TNS 675, 525. They were signing big players. Year before, TNS 450 grand. No massive ones, I'd guess, for the few years before that. Season before, Colwyn Bay 1.4 million, but nothing huge. And in the first season, TNS spent £1 million on Marlon Smeekle, who was a really good player, has moved on to Colwyn Bay now. Colwyn Bay bought a big player from TNS. TNS bought a big player from Morecambe. And both of them really were splashing the cash with regularity. I'm just frustrated that they haven't developed to an extent. But that's the disappointment of Welsh football. Let's move on and have a quick look at the English Premier League. So again, Leeds got back-to-back titles, but a bit earlier in the 5 years this time. Again, 9 sides in Europe. Burnley, Tottenham, Chelsea, despite being miles down the division. So all winning different sorts of competitions there. Liverpool, United and City winning the other 3 titles. I wouldn't say any big shocks in the division. All Premier League or Championship clubs. And Sheffield Wednesday, of course, making advantage of that tycoon they had early in the save. Into the Championship. Cardiff won the playoffs against West Brom. Go up with Fulham and Brighton. There's nothing massive here, is there? Bumpy back in the Championship. Southend had got up to the Championship, and Crawley actually. There's a couple of big ones, but Southend look like they've gone back down very quickly, and Crawley just failed to survive. But 2 slightly surprising names there, I'd say. Luton Town won the League One playoffs. That's much better to see. They're back in the Championship. Leyton Orient up to the Championship too. That's excellent stuff. Chesterfield, Walsall, Exeter all in League One too. Wrexham still up there. That's a little more surprising than we saw last time. Let's move down to League 2, where the playoff was won by Grimsby against Chester. Chester, of course, started in the National League North. They've made a big bit of progress. York won League 2 again. They started in that division too. Anybody else further down? Solihull up 1. Basingstoke going strong in League 2. But I can't really see anything going the other way. Sides that have just dropped loads of divisions. Rochdale dropping out of the Football League. Obviously a slight surprise there. Let's move on to the National League, where Swindon are down and lost the playoff final. Stevenage in there as well from League 2. Massive shocks. Gillingham still struggling in non-league. Lincoln back down in non-league. But nothing absolutely shocking. Let's go down to the north. This is where we had the most last time. So Mansfield have won it. They dropped down a couple of divisions. Barrow back down there. Not much else. Certainly not so many. Cheltenham, of course, still struggling in the National League North. That's something we've seen a pattern of from them in this save. And in the National League South, Boreham would lose to Eastleigh in the final. Yeovil going back up. And no, nothing huge there. In fact, I don't think there's any sides in the National League South that didn't start in non-league. So maybe a slight disappointment on that front. FA Cups, 2 for Burnley, 1 for City, United and Liverpool as well. Chelsea won the League Cup, 1 for Leeds, 3 for City. The Community Shield doesn't really matter. EFL Trophy, only 1 under-21 side this time, which is nice. And the FA Trophy, Forest Green and Plymouth, who had dropped out of the Football League. Probably the most surprising names there. We'll have a quick go at Raith Rovers Watch. They're 3rd in the league, but they won it the season before. They're still involved in the title race. Shared out a bit more evenly this time around. They've stayed 6th in the coefficients this time, so dropped back down before the end of the save and haven't made their way back up. Let's move on to the European ones before we finish. So Barcelona win the Champions League, 2 for Liverpool, 1 for Leeds as well. Incredible effort from them. The Europa League, English domination. Norwich, Sheffield Wednesday and United the last 3 years. Inter and Monaco before that. And the Europa Conference, all English sides: Tottenham, Norwich, Chelsea, Arsenal, Leeds. So Leeds definitely becoming the side of the save there. But that is our second look 5 years in the future with Bangor City. I will tell you, I thought about making an episode on it. I took over TNS to see what could have been from the other clubs in the nation. And there were 3 or 4 of our squad players that would have joined them, which was so annoying to see. But regardless, it's been a fun journey. It's been a brilliant save. I've really enjoyed it. I'm glad some of you guys have as well. Probably no surprises in this one, but I thought I'd give them the best possible shot. They got a bit more money for it. They got a better transfer strategy, and the league actually got a lot better players, but didn't make any use of it in Europe. So either the other nations are improving massively, or Wales have just got poor managers and poor coaching sides that can't keep their teams competing. I'll let you be the judge of which one it is. If you did enjoy the final FM21 video, please do put a thumbs up on it. There's something slightly unique coming later in the week from an older FM. I hope you enjoy that. Don't worry about the 3:30 slot though, because tomorrow and Wednesday we're live on Twitch watching Europa League action. Celtic tomorrow, Leicester on Wednesday. Come and hang out and have a chat with us. It's brilliant fun. We'll have daily beta live streams as soon as FM22 is released over there too. So you can follow us over on Twitch by finding a link in the eye above. There's also links to some of the other playlists if you missed them earlier in the year. But a massive thank you for watching. Your continued support as always. FM22 is almost here. I'm already excited to start. And fingers crossed you'll join me for it. See you next time.